The restaurant was buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of expensive wine. Yet, at the far end of the hall, humiliation hung in the air like smoke. Mia stood frozen, her tray trembling in her hands as the man in the dark tailored suit leaned back in his chair. His eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "Crawl," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "If you want to keep this job, you'll get down on your hands and knees. Crawl to me like the dog you are." The guests around the table chuckled nervously, unsure if this was a joke or an order. But to Mia, it was no joke. Her cheeks burned. She had just started this job, her last shot after months of rejection and hunger gnawing at her pride. Rent was due. Her little brother at home needed medicine. Losing this job meant losing everything. Her heart pounded. Humiliation pressed down on her chest, heavy as stone. She thought about running, about screaming, but her brother's face flashed in her mind. Slowly, against every fiber of her dignity, she set the tray down and lowered herself to the polished floor. Gasps rippled through the room. The sound of her knees on marble echoed louder than any laugh. She crawled. Each movement burned her soul. The CEO, Adrian Blackwell, smirked. Billionaire. Owner of the very company that had ruined her father years ago. The same man who had left her family destitute when his empire swallowed smaller businesses without mercy. And now here she was, reduced to crawling like a dog before him. But as she reached his table, tears in her eyes, she whispered a promise to herself. "One day, I'll bring you down." That night, Mia cried until she had no tears left. But when morning came, something inside her hardened. She refused to be the powerless girl from yesterday. She wouldn't allow Adrian Blackwell to write the final chapter of her life. Mia had always been smart. Too smart for the dead-end jobs she'd been forced into. She had studied business before her father's downfall forced her to drop out. Numbers came to her like second nature. Strategy was her hidden talent. And most of all, she remembered everything her father had taught her about corporate ethics, about integrity in a world of sharks. She began to dig. Every break, every sleepless night, she researched Adrian's company. Blackwell Global Holdings looked spotless on the surface, flawless reports, glowing press releases. But Mia had lived long enough to know corruption always left cracks. And she was determined to find them. She hacked through old articles, financial statements, employee forums. She made friends with people others ignored, the janitors, the delivery staff, the secretaries who overheard more than they should. Slowly, piece by piece, a rotten picture began to form. Money laundering. Fake charities siphoning millions. Unsafe working conditions in overseas factories. Documents buried, but not gone. And one day, while going through discarded files left near the dumpster behind the restaurant, she found it, the golden key. A hidden ledger. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Numbers that didn't add up. Names of shell companies. Secret payments to politicians. It was enough to destroy Adrian Blackwell, if only she could get it into the right hands. But Adrian wasn't stupid. He noticed her watching him from a distance, her eyes sharper than the average waitress. He tested her, throwing insults, pushing her buttons. Once again, in front of an audience, he sneered, "Dogs should know their place." But this time, Mia didn't crawl. She stared him straight in the eye and smiled. Inside, she was ready. The next morning, news exploded across the country. Major outlets ran the story, whistleblower exposes Blackwell Global in $2 billion fraud scandal. Documents were leaked anonymously, showing irrefutable evidence of Adrian's crimes. The public was outraged. Stockholders pulled out. Government investigations opened. His empire crumbled overnight. Adrian stormed into the restaurant, his power gone, his eyes wild with fury. He found Mia wiping down tables, calm as ever. "It was you," he spat. "You think you can ruin me?" She turned to him, her gaze steady, her voice soft but cutting. "You ruined yourself, Adrian. I just showed the world who you really are." He lunged forward, but security dragged him out.
Cameras flashed as the once untouchable billionaire was taken away in handcuffs.
The same man who had forced her to crawl like a dog was now powerless, his empire turned to ash. But for Mia, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. She thought of her father, who had died believing small people had no chance against giants. She thought of her brother, who would finally have a future. She thought of the other workers, silenced and humiliated, who would never be silenced again. Her story spread. People everywhere cheered for the girl who had brought down a monster. Job offers poured in. Activists wanted her voice. She accepted none at first. She wanted to build something of her own, something clean, something that honored the values her father had instilled in her. Years later, Mia stood in front of a new company headquarters, not Blackwell Global, but her own firm, built on fairness and transparency. She hired those who had been exploited. She gave chances to the ones society had overlooked. And on the wall of her office, she hung a single photo of her father and brother, a reminder of why she had fought. Sometimes she would think back to that night, to the moment she had crawled on marble while laughter filled the air. She no longer felt shame. Because that humiliation had lit a fire in her that no billionaire could ever extinguish. Her story became a symbol not of wealth or revenge, but of resilience. She proved that even the most powerless person could bring down an empire, not with claws or teeth, but with courage, intelligence, and the refusal to stay silent. And so, when people whispered her name years later, they didn't remember her as the waitress who crawled. They remembered her as the woman who stood tall and showed the world that no empire built on cruelty could stand forever. Because sometimes, it only takes one person's unbroken spirit to bring down billions.